Rick, you ready to do this?
Yes, good morning, Keith.
Good morning, man. You were about to tell me about a recent experience regarding your ego, and I was like, hold on, this is a podcast. I don't want to hear it yet. So the title of this podcast is The Sabotaging Nature of the Ego. Go, Rick. Let's hear
Oh
it.
boy. Yeah, okay. Well, let's kick it off. This is embarrassing. Uh, actually, I'm not embarrassed at all. I think this is part of being vulnerable and part of being transparent, which I think I enjoy. I've cultivated that of myself, and I really enjoy opening up and talking because it helps other people understand me, and it also gives them the opportunity to share. And so we realize that we have more in common than we don't as human beings. So let me give you a couple of really bad examples of me getting overwhelmed by my ego, despite my awareness of how sabotaging it can be. It still happens. At least I'm aware of it. So I went to a seminar, a law seminar, and you can tell by my gray hair I've been doing this a while. And it was a very good seminar. Lots of great information. It had a lot to do with some of the new trends in law, largely related to tech issues like getting metadata from different types of records and going through electronic databases and techniques to do it as a lawyer when you're doing discovery. Well, this stuff is, again, new to me because I'm an old guy and none of this existed when I got out of law school. We had no training in it. So I've sort of learned on my own a little bit here and there, but I'm terrible at tech in general. And this seminar specifically was wonderful for me. It was over my head. I must say it was over my head. But here's what happened that's ego related. So we got to the point of just before the break, as seminars always do. The guy who's leading the seminar says, anybody have any questions? I had five. I had five solid questions. And I thought, well, heck, I'll ask one. And I started to raise my hand and my heart started to beat. It was like I was arguing in the Supreme Court. I got a little bit shaky. This is a big seminar. It's probably 150 people. It's one of the first seminars that wasn't done by Zoom. So I had a lot of folks right there in the room watching me. And I just pulled my hand down and I just couldn't do it. And the reason I couldn't do it was because I knew I didn't have as much knowledge as everyone else in the room. I wanted to be thought of as an older, respectable lawyer who knows what he's talking about. And I knew as soon as I framed the question, everyone would see how naked and stupid and foolish and ignorant I was.
Mm.
So I didn't ask the question. I didn't get the information that I needed in that very moment. That's an example of the ego. The ego to me is a desires machine. And in that moment, my ego was trying to protect me from the good opinion of other people that I assumed would be revealed. Their opinion would be substantiated when my ignorance was revealed. And so I didn't ask the question and I didn't risk having any bad opinion of me. So my ego was trying to make me look good or at least avoid looking bad. And the consequence of that was I didn't get the information that I needed.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'd like to say there's a happy ending, like, okay, the second half of the seminar was better. I didn't feel so intimidated. So I finally asked the questions. No.
The suffering continued.
I suffered through the whole thing. I left not knowing, I still don't know the damned answer to what I wanted to know, those five things. And so that's self-defeating, right? It's totally
100%.
self-defeating and stupid. Who cares? What am I defending? I raise my hand and I say, what is metadata? And what are people going to do? Say, well, look, eject this guy, take his law license. Come on. But I
Right.
couldn't go through that analysis because I was thick in the ego trying to protect me from looking foolish, stupid.
Oh man, Rick. First of all, thank you so much for sharing this, man. Like,
Sure.
I really, really appreciate you sharing this. I remember one of our friends from years ago, he told me that he learned a valuable lesson that really helped him with his ego, being in situations like that. And he's like, and it really helped him. He said, listen, you never want to be the smartest guy in the room. He's like, if you look around and if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need, you need to
That's
be
great.
somewhere
Yeah,
where you can
that's a
learn
great
something,
line.
right? So he's never afraid to ask a question. He's like, everybody here is smarter than me. So
That's great.
he
I got to try
automatically
that one.
starts asking questions. And, you know, at a place like Mayo, you know, man, there's so many like, you know, people that are highly educated there. So I'm never the smartest guy in those rooms. So I'm always asking a question. You know, I'm asking. I was sitting with one of my colleagues yesterday who was writing up this great abstract for transplant, and I'm asking all kind of questions. She's talking about quality, you know, assessment tools they use, which I never heard of this tool. Like, and she's like, "Oh, that tool will be great for you." I was like, okay, great. Like now tell me what it is. And she's like, and all my friends, man, I've given them this thing to where I say, hey, listen, in every situation I'm in, I'm like, I'm a baby bird. You need to say to me, come here, baby bird. Let me show you the way. And they all do. They all say to me, Rick, they put this metaphoric arm around me and be like, come here, baby bird. Let me teach you this. Please do, because I don't know.
That's
But
wonderful.
the way that my ego has shown up has been, you know, this idea of what success looks like and how it's defined based on, you know, the standard of living that you have or are able to afford and things like that. And so I've had to deal with that during several instances in my life about like, why haven't I accomplished more? Why don't I drive this kind of car, live in this kind of house, and all those things? And it's been one of those things that, you know, whenever somebody, you know, learns or hears about my situation, and my ego is like, well, here he goes, you're gonna, you know, you're not where you should be. I've really noticed the battle inside to kind of, you know, blame people for being nosy or curious about what's going on in my life. Like, mind your own business. Like, why is this, you know, that whole thing that the ego does? It hunkers down, and it's you know, trying to protect itself. And then I say to myself, like, I notice it first of all, and that awareness is key. And then I say, I'm not. My conscious self is not. It's not saving you. You need to go. Like, let that feeling just eat you from the inside up. The ego, not the conscious self, but the ego, so that there's none of that left. I want none of that left. And so when I came to Mayo, I figured that that would be a problem because everyone there is so accomplished. And coming to Mayo, for me to have the job that I have now, required me to go back to school. And I remember being at a crossroads to where I could, you know, not be truthful about not having a degree in social sciences, which is required for the job that I do now, and which I went back to school to get. And I remember, like, if I do that, when will this end? It won't end. Like, this is always going to be there in every situation, every environment that I am with people that have these credentials. I'm going to feel this. I'm going to experience this suffering inside to either try to, you know, fake it like I know it, you know, that like I have those credentials, or I'm going to be checked out because I'm trying to protect myself from being discovered. It's just all these. It's just so much unnecessary energy, and there's so much suffering that I'm like, no, I'm in school right now, so I can get a degree, so I meet the criteria that's necessary to have this job. And the same thing with living. If someone, you know, is curious enough, you know, to ask those questions, then to, like, you know, my standard of living to be open, like, no, you know, I'm preparing for retirement vigorously now because for other reasons I didn't before, or, you know, this is where I live, or this is what my income is, and all those things. I've just really learned that if I am trying to protect my ego, that's not a good thing. I've just really learned, like, it is to go left. If it's saying go right, I'm going left. I'm doing the opposite of whatever that is. And it's hard though, because the ego,
Yeah.
it just it wants to preserve itself. It wants to, at least my ego, it wants not to look bad. You know, we land at a landmark that the ego is always trying to do two things. It's trying to look good or avoid looking bad, and it will do it at all costs.
Yeah,
At all
that's right.
costs, and including your life, it will do it for that reason. But the liberating thing to do is not to defend any of that, to let all of that go, because it doesn't matter. And I remind myself that when I don't go down that road, I unburden myself. There's a release that happens that is so freeing when you are not beholden to that. One of our close friends was in a position to where he was doing very well financially, and then some things happened out of his control, and it prevented him from taking jobs, because we live in a very affluent area, and you do there in Sedona too, Rick, and you know the area that I live in now. And a lot of people, define value by material things that you possess. And so for a long time, he would not do a job, or take jobs because he felt like they were less than him. That how was he going to explain this to other people, and things like that. But around us, his the friends who are on this kind of practice, he told us about it, and I could kind of sense him kind of, protecting himself or coming up for reasons to explain it. And we were like, dude, that's cool. Like that, this is where you work and you've done this job. And he started to try to explain away, the hourly pay. We're like, dude, we love you. We don't care. Like, let us grab the check for this or whatever else. Like, no, like those are the kind of people that you want to be around, that you don't feel the need to do any of that, and we totally was like, man, don't ever do that. Like, we're just super proud of you. And as we were talking, Billy and Tim were talking about like what they were doing, like they both have jobs, they're both gainfully employed. And they were like, dude, I started door dashing, like, and, like delivering people's orders from restaurants and stores and things like that. And Tim was telling me, Tim is all about like why this makes sense. He's like, dude, like I'm driving from A to B. I can pick this thing up, drop it off, and they cash. Like it makes it's free money on my drive. Like, and so Tim is great, but I think that helped our other friend see that the jobs we do they don't define us. The things that we happen to possess in this moment don't define us, because as soon as you leave this earth, they're not your things. They're not even your things now, And so none of that defines you. That's not your identity. And the more and more you're able to let that go, the more and more you release yourself from the grip of your ego. So Rick, thank you so much for sharing that, man. You are just so inspiring to me on so many levels. And I just absolutely, absolutely admire and love you.
Well, thank you, Keith. I love you as well. It's important for people who watch these podcasts to understand that we're both in it. We're both suffering from some of the things that we talk about, or maybe all of the things we talk about, like the dangers of the ego getting in the way of having a better life. And so I brought that example up because there's hundreds of them. And as soon as the camera goes off, I'll be in another one in 10 minutes. And so the point of the practice is you're mindful of it. You understand what that does, and you understand what the costs are. Now you can still go ahead and do it like I did in the seminar. I still said, well, the costs are too heavy. I'm not going to expose myself. I didn't learn anything, right? But maybe the next time I will. But the point is, it's a practice. It's not something that you solve once and for all. It keeps coming up. It keeps coming up. In fact, it keeps coming up. All of these messages keep coming up until the universe realizes that you've handled it, and then they tend to disappear. Okay. Once you've sort of gotten a handle on it, you'll notice that those kinds of problems don't come up anymore. I'm looking forward to the day, I hope before I die, when I go into a seminar, I can stand up and I can say, I don't have a clue what you said in the last hour.
Sure. Can I get a one-on-one something?
There you go. Yeah.
But it's I want to end with this, Rick. It's the ego makes you pay a high price, right? It makes you pay a high price, and it gives you nothing in return for it. So here you are, in a seminar. Here I am in my life, doubling down, defending the ego, letting it not, share, or speak up or ask questions. And when you pay that heavy price, you don't walk out any smarter. You haven't learned anything. Your questions haven't been answered. but what you left with is strengthening that behavior. So the next time when it comes up, you don't answer again. You don't rise to the occasion unless you become aware. The next time somebody says something, the same thing happens. I told you about the Model 3, right? Remember my Tesla story?
Good
Here
story.
I am in the moment. This happened like 6 months ago. I'm talking to this other person, and he asked me what kind of Tesla I have. And I started to explain why I got the one that was, the least expensive of them all. Like who does the ego does this? And when I walked away, I didn't feel better. I felt worse that I had to try to explain and defend. Come on, man. What am I doing? No, just answer the question and let it go. It's crazy, Rick. This
I
thing.
love you and all your warts. That's the great thing about
100%.
people. We all have warts. We all, as humans, suffer this way
100%.
Until we get a handle on it.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I say to myself. Keith, get it together in there. Get it together, man. I love you, Rick.
I love you, man. Adios. I'll see you next time.